What's up, guys? Welcome to Zygrene Car Talk, and boy, do we have a special episode for you guys today. I am joined here by not one, not two, not three, not four, but five other automotive YouTubers / car reviewers. So we have four main topics that we're going to go through today. We're going to go round table. But before we get into that, let's start with Charlie here, and let's just do a quick round of introductions and what channel you have and kind of what's the purpose of your channel.
Hey everybody, it's Charlie from Daily Motor. I run the Daily Motor YouTube channel. We do some sound system reviews, we review the cars. I work closely with a lot of the other gentlemen here, meeting some new friends, so thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
My name is Chris Brower, but you may also know me as Substitute Topher on the Topher channel. Also content on the Daily Motor channel alongside Charlie here. And you'll know my hands and my wrists from the Winding Road Magazine YouTube channel.
I'm Tedward. I started out on Winding Road Magazine working with my good friend Chris Amos, the Topher, the real Topher, and then spun off into my own thing doing Tedward drives, and luckily it became a thing enough to be able to quit my mechanical engineering job, and now that's all I do. And here I am sitting on a couch in Southern California driving fun cars in the driveway.
Living the life.
Beautiful.
I'm Kevin Jubbal from Jubbal and Cars, and started my channel about a year ago. I focus on driving dynamics, and it's also POV.
I think you guys all know me, so let's go over to Chris here.
I launched the Winding Road channel back in 2011 with POV driving videos. A lot of these guys are POV disciples of those efforts. And then in 2017, I launched my own channel called TheTopher, and that's mostly what I'm doing these days, just filming POV car videos.
So we got 5 POV car reviewers and me with my 3-camera setup, which is a pain in the ass.
That sounds awful. Why? That's a lot
so
of
awful.
energy.
We'll convert you soon enough. Don't
Soon
worry.
enough, soon enough.
Less is more.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir. Like every time I see this guy just put his GoPro on his forehead, and I'm just like messing around with suction cups, I'm like, what am I doing with my life? So, all right, so let's just get into these 4 topics today. The first one is going to be very specific, and I hope it's going to be relevant to all you guys. But I think it's kind of it's a very relevant comparison right now. GR Corolla, which you guys have one on the driveway, versus FL5 Civic Type R. Have you guys all driven both cars, by the way?
As of about an hour ago, yes.
I was going to say, it's a good thing that you waited until today.
Yeah.
We've driven, some of us have driven the Type R briefly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I haven't been
So I
in the
can't-
Type R for a ton of time. Just
Yeah.
But you can
Corolla.
speak on the Corolla.
I can speak on the Corolla, yeah.
And
Yeah,
you've
we
driven
can piece something together.
both on
I've
track.
driven my Type R
He
quite a
owns
bit, and I've driven a Corolla, GR Corolla quite a bit.
on track.
Yeah, on track.
Okay.
And now...
I've driven both on street and on track.
Gotcha. Okay, so and then Kevin and I have both reviewed both
Tedward also
cars.
has
You also have an FL5 Type R.
Yeah.
There's a chance I might get a GR Corolla, but we'll see. Anyways, I really like this topic because we're living in an age where obviously we're moving to EVs, right? But we're still getting a few just really, really driver-focused hot hatches that are really great competitors. So I want to touch on this a little bit because I've driven both, not on the same road and not back-to-back, but on separate occasions. And I have a very, I guess, strong opinion of what the pros and cons are, but I'd love to hear from you guys what you think. So why don't we start with Charlie here?
Yeah, I'm probably about the least educated on these cars, so it's good to start with me. I mean, all jokes aside, because I think Chris is probably the most experienced with both cars and can kind of finish this off. But I got some good time with the GR Corolla recently, and I was pleasantly surprised with the rawness and the raucousness of that car. It's not something you expect out of a Toyota. And my brief time with both the 11th gen Civics and all its different forms, and then the 10th gen Civic Type R as well, it's a very calculated car. It's very dialed in, it's precise. And the GR Corolla is not giving me those vibes, and it's kind of fun. I like blipping the throttle and hearing the turbo blow off, and I like the 3-cylinder sounds. I could want for a little bit more craziness out of the car, but I can't really fault Toyota for not giving it that. That's not really their brand. It was a lot of fun to throw around. I think maybe back to back, same road, the Civic would probably feel a little lighter on its feet and a little bit better at being a dancer. but I had a lot of fun driving the Corolla and just kind of throwing it around. So I'm curious to hear what everyone else thinks.
Yeah, I would say that I may be even less educated than Charlie on these cars. I have not driven the new Civic Type R. I have ridden in the back seat of the Topher's Type R, so I guess I could give you...
You're the only one.
Yeah, that's true. So I can give you some backseat impressions, but I had a ton of fun today driving the GR Corolla around. Pretty much same sort of consensus as Charlie. I like the playfulness. I like the turbo lag. I like the blow-off noise. I like that it sounds like a baby V6. The shifter action's awesome. The clutch feels great. Steering's a little bit light, but, I also agree that I could do with a little bit more... I don't know, a little bit more savage, exhaust note. But overall, I think they did a great job with what they had, and I'm excited to drive it a little bit more. But these two will give you the comparison with the Type R.
Well, we both noticed the low red line does kind of leave a little bit of like, I'm driving a Japanese hot hatch. I want a little bit of scream, and then I'm hitting the rev limiter.
It sneaks up on you, right?
Yeah, it really
comes
does.
a lot faster than
And
you
the power
expect.
dies off a little towards the red line.
Yes.
Yep.
There's a big power fall off.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just couldn't be more different. I put 1,200 miles on my Type R so far, and it's a precision knife edge like track car.
100%.
And I'm blown away that Honda gave us this level of performance and that it's dialed in the way it is. And people may think I'm crazy, but I mean, me and Chris, we compare that FL5 to GT3s in terms of like where they've gotten that car to be in that chassis.
Yeah.
Feels insane. And the big difference, so there's a lot of differences. I think in the drivability, the FL5's 2-liter, the K20C1, is so much more responsive. It's so much more potent, and while it only claims to be 15 horsepower more, it feels like 50. It feels a lot more potent than the GR.
Also front-wheel drive, less drivetrain loss.
For sure. I think they both feel really light on their feet. So I have to give GR Corolla a lot of credit for its nimbleness, its ability to change direction. But the difference is you need to get on throttle so much earlier in that GR Corolla, not only because it can put the power down, which is shocking. It's mind-blowing the way that thing can power out of a corner and how early you can get on throttle and how you can start testing yourself, like if you have the metal to actually get into it before an apex. But you kind of have to because you got to get that turbo spooled up. So it's weird. I'm glad I didn't buy a GR Corolla given the choice of the two. But that doesn't mean I don't like it. It just means that the FL5 suits my more like knife edge track car vibe. The GR Corolla I got to experience it in some really tight corners today on some variable surfaces. So a little bit of wet, a little bit of dry, a little bit of dirt, a little bit of, just greasiness, and zero fear. I genuinely could not get that car, without being a complete jerk to understeer on me under power, because it would send it to the rear and it would just do its thing. FL5, you are managing that front end a lot. So there's a lot more thought that goes into it. So think Hellcat, but in the other direction.
Yeah.
And then
That's a great way to put it.
When it comes to interiors, fit and finish, the GR Corolla just doesn't hold a candle to the Honda. The Honda feels a lot more cohesive. It feels a lot more premium. I love the steering wheel in the GR Corolla. I think it's the right diameter. It's the right width. It's really narrow. I like a narrow wheel. I don't like where BMW goes on this. Like, you have to hold it with your whole hand. It's ridiculous. But the seats in the Corolla don't do it for me.
Really? I was really well hugged in, and
I
the lack of leather
I think
makes it so you don't
you.
really slide.
They don't have the same support though, like in the back.
Agreed,
There's certain
agreed.
things where I'm like, ugh, this is gonna get old. So but I also give it a point for this, because the same way that if in 1995 there was an all-wheel drive Camry that had 250 horsepower and a stick shift, and it looked and felt just like a regular ass Camry, oh my God, we'd all be trying to import that shit today.
So true.
Basically
That's
a
so
Celica GT4 for right now. So it really does follow the tradition of that Toyota vibe, where they do not make a much better car than the car it's based on. They just give you some psycho driveline, and that's what they've done.
That's such a great way to sum it up. Kevin, what do
Very
you
well
think?
said. I gotta
You
follow
gotta
that.
follow
I
your-
gotta
You guys have
follow
to
that.
add more. Go.
Yeah.
All right, so
So glad I drove that car.
really agree with Tedward. I think Tedward did a great job summarizing the two. I say GR Corolla it's a very easy car to approach, which the benefit is that if you're a new driver and you want to go fast and you want to learn how to handle a car, then GR Corolla all the way. The downside is if you are a little bit more experienced and you want to dance with the car, it's not going to step out on you. and it can feel a little bit numb and a little bit less exciting as a result. So I remember when we were driving it in Vegas, I did get a little bit of understeer and a little bit of oversteer, which you guys will see in the videos. But I was like, I had to go back and forth on a small section of road where I was like, okay, I'm going to try it really hard here. And that to me is not as rewarding. Like, you can't really steer the car with the throttle. The Civic Type R, on the other hand, it's much more razor edge. It is much sharper. The interior, like, I remember getting to that interior thinking, this is almost like Mazda Premium. This feels way nicer. Whereas that Toyota Corolla, it still feels like a Toyota Corolla. The seats in the Civic are nicer. The materials are nicer. That honeycomb vent is nicer.
Yeah,
Civic
like Tom said, it's a nicer just base car to begin with. I mean, the 11th gen Civic just blows every other car in each, whether it's
destroys
the
the
SI
Corolla.
or the base car. Like, you're just dealing with a much better platform to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, even exterior looks, no one's mentioned that yet, but I still think the Civic is so much better of a looking car in any trim compared to the Corolla.
It depends on what you're into, right? So some people really like I personally prefer the
Do you
FL5.
really? Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I agree.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people who like the FK8, that like really overstyled, cartoony Gundam,
Could
whatever,
go for the Corolla.
they probably prefer the Corolla.
Might be one of those people.
Yeah?
Yeah?
You do?
Just slightly, yeah.
Okay.
I think the Corolla I don't think it's going to age as well as the Type R, personally,
Yeah,
styling wise.
Agreed.
But yeah, the engine as well, it definitely pulls harder. It has more character because the GR Corolla, the red line sneaks up on you and it also kind of dies off towards red line, whereas the Civic Type R just keeps pushing. Yeah, that about sums it up.
Well said. Well said. Honestly, Tedward, there's not one thing you said that I didn't agree with wholeheartedly. So
That's the first time that's ever happened.
I'm not going to repeat anything you said, but I'll add kind of my own spin on it. After driving both cars, I would say the FL5 Type R feels to me like a front-wheel drive Porsche GT in a lot of ways. Obviously, the engine is nowhere near what a GT3 engine is, but the driving inputs, the precision, even the shifter, the steering, the way the suspension is tuned, the way you can just place the front end of the car so precisely, it just screams Porsche GT. Even some of the design elements on the outside remind me of a GT car as well. The one thing I didn't like about it is even in comfort mode, I think the suspension is too harsh.
It's so stiff.
I know it uses the same spring rates allegedly as the FK8, but they retune the dampers and the car just feels really busy. Like the vertical motion from the rear end was just like rattling my brain, like just trying to drive it straight.
Our plus R mode is essentially unusable.
Yeah.
Like me and Chris both tried it on track, and then by the time the end of our track day, when we were on like wasted tires, Honda was nice and gave us extra sessions, and we were on Cup 2s that were like completely destroyed. Chris was smart and put it in comfort mode in the suspension mode. I was dumb and I was all over the place. My rear end I went into turn 1 confidently and I was wrong.
Interesting.
One thing I'm curious too is that the FL5 we drove had the Eibach lowering springs.
Yeah.
10% higher spring rates front and rear.
0.6 inch drop.
Yeah. So
But-
I wonder, I mean, that's not going to change it massively, but
That could
it is
have
going
had
to change
an
it,
effect.
noticeably.
That's a great point. That's
One
a great
thing
point.
too is that suspension or those dampers, they adapt to your driving style. So the harder you drive, the faster you drive, even if you're in comfort mode, they're going to adapt to driving style.
Really?
So they will stiffen up even in comfort mode more when you're driving hard on a canyon road than when you're just driving around
Do
town.
you know what does it use like wheel speed sensors and things?
Steering angle, wheel speed,
Got an IMU, I'm sure.
it'll just kind of figure it out. So you can go out in comfort mode on the road, drive casually, and it feels pretty good. You can go out on the track in comfort mode, and it's stiff. It's a big difference. So I don't know if there's a way to trick the dampers into just kind of having one setting, but they're still changing in comfort mode, and they're still stiffening up
is fascinating.
when you're driving
Because
hard.
I never drove, I didn't drive that car normally like on a normal road.
Yeah.
I had it in comfort mode on a stiff back road.
And what I've noticed is primary ride is great in that car. It can soak up bumps, potholes really well. If you hit big undulations, big bumps, that secondary ride really throws you.
That is
like it's
fascinating.
stiff.
big
And that could be a
yanks.
bushing thing too.
Right.
So
Okay.
Chris, you might be the most 50-50 on these two cars.
yeah, so all right, I literally just drove the GR Corolla on the street for the first time. Before that it was only track. And I will sum up the GR Corolla this way. You guys said everything else that I think too. I think the GR Corolla is a really good 8, maybe 9/10 car. It's so fun to just cruise around in. That shifter's amazing. It feels like you're driving a little rally car. And out of the all-wheel drive hot hatches and hot sedans that we've had in the last decade, Evo, STI, Focus RS, I think the GR Corolla is my favorite to drive. I think it has the best all-wheel drive system. It's a proper little rally car, and I'm so glad Toyota brought it to the United States. But it gets a little clunky and it kind of starts to fall apart when you really start to push its limits. And I think that could maybe be tweaked in the aftermarket some with slightly different suspension tuning, maybe a little bit more of a tail-happy sway bar setup, maybe a little bit more power. It's very mid-range happy. Once you rev it out, though, like it falls
really
off hard
falls
at
off.
redline. Whereas the Type R pulls all the way to $7,000. The Type R is just such a engineering marvel and a driving experience. It's unmatched with anything that I've driven in the $50,000 price point. Like it's incredible. It's not perfect. Both cars aren't perfect. I think if you want something that's really fun to drive on a daily basis, and you want winter capability and fun to drive factor in the winter and the snow and a loose surface, GR Corolla is a really good option. I think the Type R is going to lose some of its fun factor in the snow because you don't have a handbrake.
It's super boring.
It's super boring. The shifter is freezing. There's no heated seats. There's no heated steering wheel. Granted, Corolla doesn't have some of that stuff too, but depending on the options that you get. But the FL5 is just an amazing track car in ways that the GR Corolla is disappointing. Mm-hmm. And the GR Corolla is an amazing all-weather car in the ways that the Civic Type R can't quite deliver just because of its front-wheel drive
I'm curious, do you guys think that the GR Corolla would make for a better daily?
I don't know, because it's tighter, it's smaller, there's not a lot of cargo space, the rear seats are kind of tight. If you have a family, you're not going to be able to fit a rear-facing car seat in there.
I think the
Type R,
FL5 is easier to drive.
It's easier to drive,
It's
yeah.
the easiest car. Like if I need to teach someone how to drive a manual transmission,
so smooth.
Type R, man. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God. Over Integra, SI, everything. Like it's so easy to drive.
Even
It's-
over the base models.
Yeah, because
Oh,
those
big
cars
time.
are really tricky so the same way that there's a lot of turbo lag in that GR Corolla, the SI and the Integra with that 1.5 liter turbo, the first extra 1500 RPM, there's zero torque there. The
Yeah.
2
Just
liter
no
has some
inertia from
torque,
that 1.5.
and it falls. So unless you're really slipping the clutch, me and Chris laughed at each other all week.
We got
because-
like 2 good clean starts out of the Integra.
Yeah, we look like
Wow,
morons.
this
And
last
the
week,
Integra's
yeah.
even harder to drive than the SI because it has a comfort mode, which has an even more docile throttle map than the SI. And it's like, oh my God, every time I snap his neck. If he was asleep, I'd wake him up every time I started.
So the reason I was bringing that up is I feel like the GR Corolla, it is smaller, you lose practicality, but I guess for winter, I don't live in a place that snows, but the all-wheel drive, wondering how important that is. But more importantly, it's way softer and way more comfortable. At least with the example that I was driving.
It's a little bit softer,
but not
not that
I
much.
thought it was pretty stiff.
I wonder if it's
It
the
depends.
difference in the road surface that we were on. It was
Yeah.
quite a difference.
It
We
was
drove the
two
Type R on a
different
much stiffer road.
Also, you
bumpier road.
throw the Type R on a set of 18s, and that difference is a lot less
I
noticeable.
think from a suspension stiffness standpoint, I don't think the GR86 is much softer, but from a chassis stiffness, the Type R is so much more rigid, and I think that plays a really major part in tossing it around. So the ride comfort isn't that much better, despite the fact that it's got a softer suspension. It's just
see what you're
it's something just a little off about it. But I do think that in 10 years, that GR Corolla is going to have some like weird underground cult following, because right now it's big because it's just marketing, right? Like we're pushing it, it's everywhere, everyone's talking about it. But they did market it early, right? They marketed the hell out of it, and then I haven't seen one until right now. Like literally, I have not seen the car.
Yeah.
This is
Deliveries happened after all of us got our Type Rs, the first wave.
the first one I've
Yeah.
seen, and I drove it the second I saw it.
Yeah.
So the FL5s are out there. I've seen other FL5s. I've not seen any of these, but I do think that because this is this all-wheel drive, like cool drifty thing, it's a groupie rally car. It has tons of turbo lag, which you could say is a ding against it. I think it's kind of cool.
Has
I think it's
character.
fun. It has character, it has charm, and the FL5 is almost too good in so many respects that it loses out on some of that charm. And the faults that I have that I find in the GR Corolla, I think are actually fun. I think they're kind of cool.
So I think you make a really interesting point about the marketing of the Corolla, because I'll just speak for myself personally. When, I don't know if you guys, I mean, you guys probably already knew like before some of these things came out, but I don't know if you remember, but last year, I think it was around March, maybe March or April, there were some teasers or some shots, so like actual shots of the car that got leaked. The night they got leaked, I got wind of it just because I was like, just browsing around looking at car stuff. And I was so hyped.
I was ready to buy one.
I was so ready to buy one too.
I was like, who do I call? I don't even know who to call. I
Right.
just was like flailing, like running around my house, like, how do I get this?
And the thing that made me really like it, other than like the kind of the box flare like rally car look, which I think is awesome, it was the fact that the all-wheel drive system, you can manually set it to 30/70.
It's such a big deal because Ford really missed on the Focus RS because that rear diff couldn't really handle anything. And everyone who's like, it's funny, I did a video where I did a Focus RS and I was like, it's front wheel bias. Like, I'm sorry. And they're like, no, it can send everything to the rear. I'm like, yeah, for about 12 seconds before you have a warranty claim, if you are within the warranty. Yeah. That can't handle any heat. It's just some yucky sort of like Haldex thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas this thing, like, holy shit, you can mob in this thing. That's the thing. I live in Boston, so I occasionally experience some fun snow driving, and I'm really missing out because I've driven an E92 M3 for the last 6 years, and now I'm driving an FL5. Ugh, boring. I can't do anything. I don't have a handbrake to even look like a hot boy. That thing, you could just sit in a rotary or a roundabout, whatever you want to call it, all day.
In the snow.
In the snow.
Yeah.
I mean, in the wet.
Yeah.
You probably
If
could.
I didn't have the BRZ for the winter, which is my constant entertainment going sideways, I would go out and get a GR Corolla. I think GR Corolla and Type R would be a great summer winter.
See, you guys are getting me really hyped up to drive the GR Corolla again, because where I was going with the marketing thing, the 30/70 split, was I had this preconceived notion of how I thought the car would drive, which is a power oversteer. When I drove it in Vegas, again, maybe it was a road we were on, but I intentionally tried to be a hooligan with it.
I think it was grips.
It was just grip everywhere. And this is on like PS4 tires, which is not that grippy of a tire. Yeah. And I just could not get it to misbehave. It was just full confidence everywhere.
You can't get that sideways.
I stepped out of the car with just like a feeling.
Unless you're in an STI, I just in my brain expected that car to understeer under power, and it didn't. And it like took me 3 or 4 turns and just burying the throttle to be like, oh my god, this really doesn't do that. It wasn't an accident. Like, it doesn't understeer under throttle. It just puts it to the rear and allows it to drag itself out with the front. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of us have driven the GR Corolla on loose surface, so we don't know how it reacts, how it handles.
I mean, I've seen some shots of it going super sideways.
I bet it's perfect on that.
And like the GR Yaris, which is essentially the same, I mean, in a lot of ways the same car,
Sure.
is known for being a great drift car.
Same exact drivetrain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Toyota needs to, in the next year or two of the GR Corolla, for their own sake, bring out some sort of version that's going to be a little bit more of that daily driver friendly car, because there are a lot of people who see Toyota as this approachable brand who they don't really buy Hondas, they don't really buy sporty type cars, but they see, oh, Toyota's giving us something with some sort of character, and it's this all-wheel drive hot hatch, and maybe I'd like to get one as a daily driver, but right now it's a little too spicy. The ride's a little too firm. Like Chris said, there's no place to put anything in the car. So they almost need just a little bit more of a light version. I don't know how they'd market that or how they'd step that back, but one that just rides a little bit more smoothly and still has the powertrain, but is a little bit easier to live with. And maybe, I don't know, maybe the mid-trim. You came to me after driving them and said the mid-trim is the one to get. So maybe that would have the kind of creature comforts to go along with it. But I do think there are people who kind of want something like a Civic Si, but from Toyota. And I'm not saying that the power needs to go down.
That. Yeah.
But like the Civic Si is a very livable car. And someone wants something that's fun from Toyota, but is also livable.
I think they'd have to start over. I mean,
yeah, because you can't give it more cargo
space. You have to.
But it's not the cargo space. It's just the fact that this is pretty intense getting into this. But if they could just step it back like just a little bit.
Maybe some suspension tuning.
Yeah, just suspension tuning, and I don't know. They already have the Corolla, and they have this Corolla Apex, which I think is a missed opportunity. So maybe they could take the GR Corolla's powertrain and put it in like a sporty, even their bright blue manual, Civic hatch that they've had for a while. People have wanted a cooler Corolla for a while.
Yeah, fair enough.
And this one's just really up there.
Needless to say, I can't wait to drive one again because I'll be comparing one against an FL5 at some point on a road that like I'm very comfortable with. So I think that's going to be like just really revealing. So, okay. So second topic. I know we spent probably like close to half an hour on this first one.
It's because you brought up the Type R with Tedward and the Topher in the room.
Yeah, that was your first mistake.
We can record you
Biased.
2 different podcast episodes in 2 hours each, or 1 hour each.
All right. This second topic I think is just as fascinating, but in a totally different kind of way. And that is the art of car reviews. What I would love to learn from each of you is what is your approach to car reviews? Because, I mean, obviously you guys put out a lot of content, a lot of reviews. And I assume you're not just going into each one completely winging it. That might be a bold assumption.
A lot of eyes just open in this room. You'd be shocked.
But at least I would assume you have at least a general, like, I'm going to do this first, that first, and then the other thing.
There's a framework.
There's a
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'd love to just hear, like, high level, maybe spend 5 minutes each just explaining your process.
Let's go the other way around this time because he's the most experienced. And
I like that.
All right,
Yeah,
let's start with Topher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot lately because it's easy after you've been doing this for a while to get stuck in the same pattern, you say the same stuff, and you feel like you're repeating yourself over and over and over again. I think the number one important thing is to remain interested and passionate with the type of videos that you're making and be proud of the content that you're putting out. And that requires a little bit of evolution and change over time. Though that said, consistency is also really important. I think at the end of the day, you need to put out videos that you want to watch and that you feel like fill a gap in the space. We all essentially do the same thing on paper, but we all bring different takes to the table and different opinions. And I love watching Tedward's videos for different reasons that I like watching Charlie and Chris's videos on Daily Motor, and Winding Road just doesn't talk. So, you just want to listen to the car. That fills a space too. There's no language barrier. We have a more global audience on Winding Road.
Comments require lots of Google translation.
A lot of Google Translate
Luckily,
going on.
YouTube gives you that
Yeah.
to translate.
Now it does.
Yeah.
It didn't for a long time.
But I think at the end of the day, a lot of us, as you may have seen a few minutes ago, like we tend to kind of wing our videos. I know I do. There's a general framework, of course, there that we follow just to kind of get all the talking points done. But a lot of it is just off the cuff. And some of that is just down to the person, what you're comfortable with, what type of production value you want to put into your videos. Like, you have to live with what you're putting out there. Yeah. And some people just can't even do POV, can't even do what we do because they want to create a higher production video. And, like Savage Geese, like those guys are so dedicated to the craft of filmmaking that they're actually not even bordering, they are making documentaries now. Like, that's the quality of their content. Mark and Jack aren't going to go out and start filming one camera angle videos. Like,
I would pay to watch that though.
I think people would still watch it. They would watch those guys do anything. Yeah. But we're kind of the opposite end of the spectrum where we get a lot of information out, we put a lot of content out, we can drive a lot of cars. You do so many comparisons, and you guys drive so many cars as well, that it's nice to be able to kind of have that quantity over maybe overall production quality. And that's been a real mark of all of our success over the years, because we've been able to kind of stay up with that and keep it sustainable.
Dude, I think Kevin and I, as we were driving here, we were like, I wonder how many videos Topher has put out. 1,200 videos.
Just on his channel.
That's just
that's
since
just
2017.
Yeah.
That's
probably multiply that by 3
outrageous.
at least on Winding Road.
Yeah, Winding Road was, I kind of handed you guys the reins. I was probably at like 1,500 or 1,700. I don't know.
How many do you do per week?
I was posting almost a video a day. Now I'm like dialing it back at a video every other day or so. Yeah.
3 to 4 a week now.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Just 3 to 4.
December it was like 6 or 7 a week.
That's crazy.
So, And that's easy for me. It's not a big deal. It's okay.
One camera angle.
One
Yeah.
camera angle.
Still a lot of work though.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad.
Be
Okay.
surprised.
A couple hours.
All right, I guess I'll go next. Well said, by the way. Like, because this is the second time you've said to me, you know, that you're trying to focus more on like doing stuff that you actually like to do versus just doing stuff for the sake of having content. I recently started taking the opposite approach just to play with it and see where it would get me. So like, I mean, you're the one who enabled it, but I started doing press cars for Mazda and Hyundai,
Sure.
right? And when I first started doing those, I was like, all right, I only want fun cars. So Mazda gave me the Miata, or maybe like the Mazda 3 Turbo. And then they were like, after I did that, I was like, okay, Hyundai, give me the Elantra N, the Kona N, blah, blah, blah. And after I was done with that, I was like, okay, what do I do now? So
End of list.
so they gave me like a CX-50 and then like a CX-5 and then like a Hyundai Ioniq 5 and whatever. And at first I was like, man, like I'm not even remotely interested in these cars. But then as I got a little bit more comfortable with the art of reviewing a non-performance or like non-enthusiast car, I started getting really interested in just like old man stuff, like oh, like these like the rear cargo space and like the back seat has this much headroom, and I was like, oh yeah, it's like adaptive cruise control with lane keep assist. And I just started noticing things that I never thought I would have cared about, and it's kind of opened up a new opportunity for me to step outside the realm of just performance cars. That being said, those videos haven't gotten me that many views or numbers, but I can say that I still to an extent personally enjoy reviewing those cars. Like my Hyundai Nexo, like super obscure, like hydrogen powered thing, I have like maybe 500 views on that video, but I actually really enjoyed making that video. So I'm gonna like test the boundaries with that a little bit more. I've only been doing that for about 6 months and just kind of see where that takes me. But I think for, you know, going back to my normal style of videos, what I'm trying to do more nowadays is less of the single car reviews where I'm just focusing on one car. Because a lot of times the cars I review are owner submitted, right? So a lot of times they're cars from 10, 15, maybe even 30 years ago. So they're not super timely or relevant. So I think the way that I have to put a spin on it is to compare it against other cars that other YouTubers might never have even thought to do. So I did like a Cayman GTS versus like an Evora GT. That might be somewhat relevant, but I didn't see that comparison anywhere else on YouTube. So those types of like quirky comparisons, I feel like are kind of a niche area for me right now for cars that are, again, not timely or relevant.
That's so weird because I'm literally editing an Evora GT versus... No, I'm just kidding.
So what about you, Kevin?
So I'm like the freshest to this in the sense that I've been doing this for, it hasn't even been a year yet. So I'm still figuring out the whole process. If you guys are really just winging it, I know this guy doesn't take notes. He just like memorizes horsepower and like torque and like...
You write things down?
I gotta write things down. So I'll like, I have my little Notion thing.
That's a good idea.
I have my team.
Write it down.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'll do a little bit of research before each car. And beyond that, I mean, like I don't have press cars yet, but I'd like to kind of experiment with driving a lot of user-submitted cars, taking my own car on track, driving other people's cars on track, talking about the cars on the street, on track. Even just doing like my own takes, like, you know, random videos about ownership of the CX-50 or the GR86, the two cars that I own right now. So just figuring out the process.
Cool.
Yeah, I drive such a weird and wide variety of cars that my job, the way I boil it down, and this sounds a little too artsy and bullshit, but it's the easiest way for me to describe it. I let the car talk through me. Like, that's my job. My job is just a conduit between this machine and the audience, and that's it. I want to explain things in as relevant terms as possible, especially when they're really out there cars that no one other than the ultra wealthy will ever get the opportunity to drive.
Lexus LFA.
I mean, yeah,
Bizzarini.
the Bizzarini.
Yeah, tell us, everyone, real quick, like kind of how you stand apart in terms of what you drive for your channel compared to all of us.
Yeah, so I don't get many press cars. We have a very fractured, weird network out in New England. I could do an entire podcast on that, but basically, most of my cars come from two places. One is the Bond Group, or actually, it's just Bond Group. There's no the. Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts. The other is Boston Motorsports in Brighton, Massachusetts. And Bond Group started as an Aston Martin dealership. I was doing some marketing materials for them, and then they sold the Aston and Lotus franchise and just went hard into all of the weird broker cars. So this is the Steve Serio, who owns Bond Group. He's the guy that Jerry Seinfeld goes to when he says, "I need to add something to my collection. I'm looking for this." So I've driven some of Spike Ferriston's cars that have come through. Like those are the types of things that I end up reviewing. So really weird hot rod speedsters, original speedsters, which means that I get to go and I get to drive vintage cars that are as period correct as possible. And this is what's wild, is because I will drive concourse level cars that are not some build that some guy made. It's if I'm driving a Testarossa or I'm driving a Dino, that is the most period correct Dino there is. And it's like, it will win at places, at like a ridiculous concourse or something. So it's really exciting for me because I get to feel a car that actually drives like it did in the 1960s or the 1950s. And that is my absolute passion, is driving like weird stuff and trying to relate to them in period. So I drive like a Ferrari 330 GT 2+2. I have to compare it to an Aston Martin DB4. Right? Like that's what it is. That's what it would have competed with at that time. And the DB4 would have been at the end of its run when this Ferrari was coming out. So you're like, whoa, this chassis and this Ferrari is light years ahead of this Aston Martin. And it's going from a straight six to a Colombo V12, all these wild things, the sounds, the sensations, the steering feel. And you start to really appreciate what's going on in those Goodwood Festival of Speed things. So I mean, I take it like my job is just to take a vehicle, try to put myself in the shoes of a buyer or an owner in the period, whether it's today with a GR Corolla, who would buy this car? I'm not going to talk down to a car. Every car, there's an ass for every seat. So you'll very rarely see me pan a car. I will critique a car, EQS. I can say it's too stiff. This thing should ride like a Maybach. It should
Subaru Legacy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So let's just say when I was starting out, I think a lot of people do this in writing as well. Like any journalist, when they want to make a name for themselves, and I'm guilty of this, you go at things hard. You have hard takes. You have mean takes. You don't pull punches because you want to make a name for yourself and you want people to hear you. And the worst example of this, and I stand by everything I said, but I was probably way too mean about it, was the Subaru Legacy. It was like a 2021 or 2020 or something like that. It was just like a piece of garbage, and it put me to sleep to the point where I'm like, this is dangerous. You might as well just drink and drive because this is ridiculous. It's that bad. And
Don't drink and drive, by the way.
yeah, but like I went at it really aggressively, and it's still my least favorite car ever driven, like ever. I've never driven a car I've liked less than a Subaru Legacy. It's the worst thing in the world. And there were old, great Subaru Legacies, which is what blew my mind.
Like the Spec B.
I love the Spec B.
Spec B is
cool
awesome.
car. But yeah, I don't take notes. I think numbers are the most boring part of a car review for me. That's the thing, because I already know that information. I do not want to give you information that you could find out on Wikipedia or in a brochure. I add it for context. So my walkarounds are quick. I want to go around. I'm like, okay, look, this is our powertrain. This is the numbers. These are the horsepower figures. To me, none of it matters because, look, you can put FL5 next to GR Corolla and say 315 horsepower, 300. That car does not, that is so irrelevant because that car does not feel like 300 if that's 315. I'll just put it that way. So I try to just encompass the driving dynamics and feel and express how I feel driving it. And if I don't like it, I've learned I'm not just going to kill it and pan it and tell everyone it's junk. If it's an Aston Martin Vantage that squeaks and creaks like nothing else on the planet, I have to say, like, look, this is what you're buying. You're going to have to live with it if you want this style. If you want to look like that guy pulling up to the valet at the golf club or whatever, like, this is just the way it is. I'm sorry. A Camry's going to be more screwed down. But do you want to show up in the Camry or do you want to show up in the Vantage? That's your deal.
Damn. Well said. Now to follow that.
Right. Am I allowed to say I'm new at this still or no? I think
I
I've
don't
been
think
doing
so.
this
You're
for long
seasoned,
enough.
and you don't give yourself enough credit.
Yeah, you get it. You're under
I
control
love
now,
your
right?
reviews.
Oh, thank you.
Before you start, I just want to say, when I saw one of your very first reviews,
The Passat.
I I called Chris immediately, and I was like, he is picking things out that I never would have said, and you actually reinvigorated me to make different takes, to look into different things, to get out of my own shell, because you were looking at stuff that I wasn't thinking about.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I know you told me that a year ago, but to hear it again is like, so for me, it's obviously I'm shooting for 4 different channels. So it's like almost 4 different cadences, which I enjoy because it keeps things fresh. It keeps things exciting for me. When I'm shooting for the TheTopher channel, I've got to memorize things like ground clearance and, you know, other sort of numbers that Chris really likes, but
I'll find out the ground clearance when I hit the skid plate on the rock.
right. But it's a lot of fun to just make so much different content, and especially when we go out to these different events, when we go out to press events, and I know we talked earlier about like kind of our, I don't want to say lack of preparation, but just kind of confidently going into things, throwing the camera on, hitting record, and just here's what I'm observing. Usually what I do is, to be blunt with it, is I'll grab the Monroney, I'll read it like 10 times, and then I'll just have the numbers in my head and go. So, I mean, it's like I said, for Chris's channel, for Winding Road, it's pretty simple. It's kind of the same sort of thing, but we don't talk, so that's nice. I like to do lots of different ASMR things. I like to touch the visors and the headliner and the seat material, and, you know, touch things so people can really see and hear what it's like to be in the car. And of course, wear headphones. If you watch the Winding Road videos and you don't, you should be wearing headphones, because we record with binaural microphones. Chris is a big enthusiast of that.
Wait, let me just give the comment. Ugh, it's stereo.
What's that?
Well, because it's stereo, but people yell at us and they're like, "Why you call it binaural? It's stereo." I'm like, "Well, yes, binaural is stereo, but it's the placement.
more
It's,
specific.
it's a vector. It has direction and, or it's a velocity. It has direction and speed. So yes, it has 2 microphones, but they are placed in strategic locations.
I don't
It's
scroll
3D
down
sound.
that far in the comment section.
Don't go to the
I don't
spam
scroll that
ones or
far.
the held for review.
Oh, okay.
You'll be really
Yeah, I
hurt
know.
by what's in there.
Yeah. And then channel number, what am I on right now? Channel number 3, Daily Motor with Charlie over here. We have a unique style in the way that we have a 4,000 square foot warehouse that we keep some of our personal cars in, and we do our press car swaps there every morning, or not every morning, every Monday of every week. And so Charlie and I go out in each car that gets dropped off, and we give our raw first impressions. And when the cars are leaving, we talk about what it was like to live with the cars for a week. So that's another kind of fresh take on the POV review that just kind of, you know, keeps things exciting for me. And then my personal channel, Topher Drives, is kind of like a view into my personal realm of things. So like I have my personal cars on there, of which I have way too many.
You have cool cars.
Thank you.
You're
A
such
lot of them are broken.
and you're such a babe. Like, you're such a young buck with some of the most eclectically cool, like, affordable to the point where I'm like, are you selling drugs? Like,
Wait,
some
what
of your
cars,
cars
what
are.
cars do you have? I'm very intrigued.
So I've got my first ever car still. I've owned it for 11 years almost at this point. It's a 2009 Chevy Cobalt SS Turbo. I've got a 2003.
Wait, how many miles in the Cobalt SS?
56,000.
Yeah, it's super
It's
clean.
That's the mintiest.
Yeah.
It's
auto?
It looks
It's a-
really good.
It's a 5-speed manual.
Is that
Holy.
Yeah.
Is that the turbo or the super
Turbo.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
that
the
is
good
a
one.
rare.
That's the fast one.
260
car.
horsepower, 260 pound-feet of torque. So that I got that car was my first ever car, and then I've also got my 2003 Lexus IS300 5-speed manual.
That's
owned
where
that.
I first got introduced to you, because that's you drove
Yeah.
his car on.
We could go on for my whole history with Chris and everything for a whole separate podcast also, but
Yeah, we've got some history.
we do.
Yeah.
But that Lexus is a great car. I've owned that now for almost 7 years, so I've had that one for a while as well. I keep car. My problem is I'm a hoarder, so I'll buy.
You
a
don't
car.
sell one to buy another.
Yeah.
Oh, high five. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just keep adding, which is the problem. Okay, so that's car number 2. Car number 3 is my 2006 Porsche Cayman S 6-speed manual.
I saw you got that. I used to
Yeah.
have an identical.
Okay, yeah.
example.
Guards red, natural brown interior, Carrera sport wheels, sport steering wheel. It's like my ideal spec. I looked for months to find it and found it down in Virginia. So
That's the one where I was like, we need to audit your tax returns because you're
Mm.
not reporting something.
Admittedly, my grandfather helped me a little bit with that car, so I didn't have to get a loan, which
Thanks,
was really
Rose.
nice. Yeah, so got lucky there. I know that I'm blessed in that respect. So that's 3. Car number 4. What is
Do
car
the
number 4?
Mercedes sedan.
Oh,
We're
right,
going
right,
into
yeah.
non-running cars now.
yeah.
Okay, so
Only runners.
The next car, which has a bit of a story, it's a 1986 Mercedes-Benz 420 SEL, and I bought it from insurance auction in Flint, Michigan, and it had been in a drive-by shooting. So all of the
No
windows
one was
were-
in the car.
What?
No, there was no
Presumably.
that we know of, unless they cleaned it. But all 4 side windows busted out. The windshield had bullet holes. There's like bullet holes in the glove compartment area. So I just got a windshield put in that. That car does start, run, and drive. It just needs to have new side windows put in. It sits in the warehouse and collects dust mostly, and I'm hoping that at some point I'll have time to finish that car up.
Other Mercedes.
Okay, yep. Car number 5 is a 2000 Mercedes ML55 AMG that I bought for $1,000 from my buddy Corbett, who daily drove it.
Insane that one doesn't have bullet holes in it.
I know, right? Yeah, bless his heart, he daily drove it for 2 years and spent probably thousands of dollars in premium
What's
fuel.
the mileage on this car?
The mileage on the ML55?
Yeah.
180,000.
You got it for $1,000.
$1,000.
Not running well.
It runs, just not well. So we're having this problem. We've been going down the rabbit hole of diagnosing it. It starts, it idles fine, but when it's under load, it kind of falls on its face, and we think that it's the electronic throttle body's not fully opening all the way. So I just ordered a new throttle body, and that should be getting put on this week. So we'll see if that fixes it. But I am now several $1,000s into this ML55 that I was hoping to only be like $1,500 to $2,000 into. So
Look around the room. Look how shocked we all are.
oh yeah, I know. So I got myself into that. I know. I wish I was more in love with Japanese cars, but I love German cars so much. And then finally, I'm not trying to take up my whole block here, but last car, 1999, is a 99, right? Yeah.
Like I have to ask him what your car
Well,
is.
I'm his car keeper.
he's driven it more than I have.
He's the caretaker.
It's a 99 BMW M Roadster with Dynan accessories. So it's got
Dynan tune and everything.
Dynan
More
Stage
than
1
accessories.
tune, exhaust and intake.
It's a
Healthy.
That's
It's
the
healthy, it's
S50
fast.
It's a great car.
S52?
S52. Yep.
Okay.
So they switched to S54 in 2002, I guess, or 2001.
One.
No, you're right, 2001. It's great. I mean, it's just like a little M3 basically, and it's healthy. It's cosmetically, it's a little ugly.
The interior's
respect.
eroding a little bit, but that's
It
it's
is
fine.
there's
some erosion.
Charlie. So we bought it down in Illinois, and Charlie drove it home and did autobahn speeds, and the glove
used
box fell off of the dashboard.
Michigan did that.
E36 interiors are just. I mean, Tom, you can probably.
They just like you always like get into your house and they're still part of you.
Yeah.
You're like, oh wow, what's that flake? You're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's part of us."
That's exactly it.
So I guess to sum everything up, it's just I'm extremely fortunate to be in this realm with these 3 guys, and it's just been awesome these past couple of years filming for all the separate channels and hoping to go forward with the personal channel. Hopefully find some more time. Actually, one more thing I want to say about my personal channel before we move on to Charlie is that I've beyond my personal cars. Sometimes I have extra time with the press cars that we drive during the week. So I like to do this series called Comfort Mode, which was inspired by Tedward, which is where I just go out in the car and it's more of like a relaxed style review where I just kind of drive the car. It's I'll give some numbers at the beginning, but it's more just like a relaxed, like you're just like hanging out in the car with me, podcast style. Like, we don't always have to talk about cars, but still seeing the car, I still have POV, so you can still be like you're in the car and binaural audio. Stereo.
That's really great because like my drive therapy videos, which is
That's what inspired it, because those are like my comfort videos. So that's I wanted to. In fact, I texted you and I was like, "Hey, can I kind of like
I was like, yeah,
Copy it.
bounce off of this?"
I remember
And,
that.
Yeah,
And I was like, yeah, go do it. I'm like, I do those when I have so much anxiety that I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't do anything and I
Yeah.
don't want to go fast and I don't want a speeding
Exactly.
ticket. And also I don't have access to any cars right now. So I'm just taking the same car I drove the last
Sure.
2 videos.
yeah.
I'm
So-
going to just go talk about like, how did I become a mechanical engineer? Or
Right.
how do I deal with the stress of existence?
Exactly. So it's cool to do those sort of videos plus my personal car stuff. But
Very cool.
that was a lot.
That's nice.
Yeah,
That's good.
we've inspired each other.
I love you guys so much.
Yeah.
This is like really sweet. Like you don't understand. Like it's really funny because now I'm just stalling Charlie.
Sorry, Charlie.
I really like.
You
we're
volunteered
sitting-
to go last.
I'm like on this couch with like some of my favorite people that I've ever met, and we all are colleagues in this really strange way. And these are the only people that I can talk to about my job. These are the only people that I can complain to about my job, because if I'm having a hard day, someone's like, "Oh, wow, you got a nail in the tire of a Lamborghini. Your day must be so fucking hard." Like, dude, shut the fuck up. And nobody wants to hear it. But like, we all know, we're like, "Oh God, who did you call? What is it?"
Can we get another Lamborghini to replace this Lamborghini? That would be
Do you think we
great.
can get another Lamborghini? Because we're gonna need that.
Yeah, we're gonna need the Lamborghini. Oh, it's coming money. Don't worry, you're fine. Yep. Yeah.
Like, you didn't need a tow truck. You're fine.
And segue.
Sorry. Go,
Last
Charlie.
but not least.
Me. I actually broke off, and Tom and I have talked about doing a podcast on this separately. I used to work for Car and Driver magazine, so that was an entirely different realm of the same overall sphere of what we all do, but we are such a different way of doing this.
You were real.
Yeah, well, it was real, but it was also just so different in the way you're allowed to approach your passion. And at the end of the day, that's what all of us are doing here, is our passion. So looping it back into what Chris talked about is allowing your passion for each car, whether it's a $25,000 Kia or it's a $400,000 Lamborghini. You need to be passionate about something. If it's the way CarPlay works, or if it's the way it feels when you put your right foot down.
Or if the door panels match.
If the door panels match. We all have our things that matter to us, and allowing that personality to come through is what makes YouTube exist, and why people flock to YouTube outside of TV or websites or anything like that. So yes, we could all go drive the same car, but we need to allow our personalities to come through and express what we want to say, because that's why people would come and watch all of our videos. I started posting a video per day in September of 2020 and have posted at least one since then. So I'm catching up to you real quick.
Charlie
Yeah,
works
yeah.
harder.
It's Daily
than
Motor
all
for a
of us.
reason.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put it like I
I-
think I work pretty hard, and then like I'm like, what's Charlie up to? I'm like, oh my god.
Right. And
Charlie's out running a fuel economy test on an Equinox and
Sick
doing a
puppy,
sound
dude.
system test while he's out there, and then a members only test, and then coming back to shoot his final thoughts with me, and then doing a podcast.
Members only.
Yeah.
What's on that one?
Oh yeah.
Just wear
well, you
jackets.
gotta sign up.
You gotta sign up, man.
Daily Motor only fans, you know. No, I will take that as a compliment, but just to
No,
attest
you
to that, I
should.
mean, we're out here on this trip driving
Oh, yeah.
10 different cars because I care about it. I love it. I love doing this sort of thing.
And you booked
it's-
them for us.
Yeah, right. I did all the phone calls, all the
Let us
emails.
not overlook the fact that Charlie doesn't have social anxiety, and that is a real valuable thing to have in a group of friends who does shit like this. Because I'd be like, I have to talk to people?
Right. Yeah.
He is an enthusiast of administrative tasks.
Yeah, and I love providing that for you guys to be able to come out and hop in these cars and go and everything. But Chris gave me a lot of opportunities and allowed the doors to be there for me to be able to walk through them. And I've done a lot of things similar to you in that trying different video ideas, going like, well, I should be working harder. I should be putting this splash screen in to kind of show this and make that. But what's really been great over about the last year or so is Chris working with me, and we've started shooting videos together. One of us wearing the POV helmet and the other one still just mic'd up by lapel. And our impressions are so raw, but they're so candid that the four of you could sit silently and watch us in person or whatever and genuinely enjoy hearing us talk about the spare tire, to the subwoofer in the back, to the way the seats fold down, to the materials in the back. And we kind of move with a very natural cadence and just really talk about how we're experiencing the car in the live. And that's what Chris does in his way, and that's what Tom does in his way. But lately, by us doing it together, it adds a comedic effect, and it kind of makes it feel like the viewers are sort of in the back seat watching us. And we've gotten a lot of really nice comments lately of people enjoying that, of kind of feeling like there's just an extra element there. I mean, two is better than one in a lot of ways. And Chris and I vibe well enough to have enough. We're kids who grew up hitting buttons in cars and dealership lots, and that's coming through.
My dad called me Buttons until I was like 16.
There you go.
That was my nickname, because of every car I ever got in, I just touch everything. He's like, oh my God, stop.
So the last thing I'll say, and I know we're going to run over time on everything for you, but if you make your passion your job, your way to survive, there are going to be days where it's work. We've all been there, where if you have to do something and you don't want to do it, all of a sudden it's a job. I don't care what it is. But letting your passion still live and making sure that it comes through in all the content you create is probably the most important thing about it, because it allows us to do this day in and day out.
Damn, that is so relatable to where I am right now. Love that. But I know we are pretty much at time. We got a
dinner reservation in 2 minutes.
Dinner res. No, it's in 32 minutes.
They'll keep listening. What's the
Beautiful.
third, or what's the last topic? We'll fucking nail
Okay,
this.
I'm gonna change this last topic in a way to make it really like rapid fire, to where we can each just do it in 1 minute.
Cool.
For whatever reason, doesn't matter if it's performance or anything else, what is the best / most memorable car you've ever driven?
911 GT3.
Which one?
It was the previous gen. It was what would that be? 991.2.
Yeah.
I've driven both, and it was partially just because of initial response to your question. I was younger, I was newer to the game, and the first time shifting that manual transmission. I'm not a gun enthusiast, but it felt like
action.
Yeah, it was such an amazing, between the sound and the acceleration and the feel of the car, and me being younger to it all and not quite as jaded. It was so great. And you could argue what's better, 991.2 or 991 or any of the generations, but that was the one that made the most impact to me.
Sure.
I go to bed and I dream about the Lexus LC500 convertible.
Ooh.
I've driven 4 or 5 of them at this point, and it's not the fastest, not the sharpest, but it has a lot of soul, and I also enjoy being comfortable and having air-conditioned seats and everything like that, and just hearing that naturally aspirated V8 and the raw shifts from that 10-speed automatic is just like bliss to me.
Given what cars you have in the garage, being all older cars, I'm very surprised you chose that.
Well, I mean, my personal cars are my personal cars, and I think that also the LC500 was one of the first press cars that I drove. I had actually driven one prior to driving press cars, but one of the first press cars I ever spent time in was an LC500. So it's like it's also a fond memory in that way.
Mm.
And also having put so many miles on LCs, we took one around the whole perimeter of Michigan. So it's. Yeah.
It's so weird because I'm gonna even like get the year and the name of the car wrong, but I mean I've driven like everything from LFAs to wild Ferrari 250s, but like there's this little Alfa Romeo Giulietta Veloce, Super Veloce, something like it had done like 5 Mille Miglias. It was like a 1950. I think it was a 1955. And I just remember this little like 1300cc, I think. I'm probably wrong about all of this. Doesn't matter. It was just such an epic drive. This gearbox was delicious. The sound was crazy. It was so intuitive. You just connected immediately. And it was this tiny little red thing. And I don't think anyone would even give it a second glance other than, oh, old car.
We found it.
Oh, man.
1956 Alfa Romeo Giulietta Sprint Veloce.
Sprint Veloce.
You got it
That's
right.
No idea what that
Close,
is.
yeah.
It was just incredible. And like, you know, I've driven a lot of like coach built cars and stuff, from like the Lancia, Flaminia, Zagato, and all these. That thing is like probably I put it on Winding Road Magazine. It's not even on my channel. It's like one of my favorite cars I've ever driven.
That's a looker.
That is a looker.
And it sounds bonkers. Alfa Romeo, like I'm telling you guys, everyone thinks of Alfa Romeo as like bullshit because we grew up in like, you know, the 80s, 90s. And so we think of like, you know, junky spiders and stuff like that. The things they used to come out with in the 50s and 60s would blow your brains apart. There's a reason why Alphaholics is an existent company.
Fair enough.
Good.
This is a tricky question because I want to be objective with it. I want to tell you which car I think was the best that I drove. But
No, you got to go off from your heart.
it's like
Yeah.
it's
It's got to
such
be
a
the gut
subjective
reaction.
thing.
Yeah.
So the car that comes to mind, I think it is probably one of the objective best cars that I've driven. But a big part of it was just the day, because we were in Rancho Palos Verdes. I was driving Jimmy's 997 GT3, and that I just went straight to Giggle City. I was just pushing that car hard. I love that hydraulic steering, telepathic. Everything was just so on point. The ocean, the windy roads. It was like the streets were empty. That was just the memory where I was like, starting this car YouTube channel was one of the best fucking.
And we're
decisions
driving
I
it
made.
again tomorrow.
And we're driving it again tomorrow. Hey.
Nice. I'm gonna let you go next.
This was a car that I drove pretty early on in my career, and it was the first kind of taste of, oh, this is what old school motoring was like. It was a Factory 5 replica Cobra. And it was this guy who was one of my best friends. He built it in his garage when he was 17. He was getting ready to sell it. I drove it. It was fantastic.
What motor did it have?
The 427
427
probably.
yeah.
I don't know, the Ford V8 motor, one of them. But it was amazing. I slid it around. It was just, I had like a track day on the road with it. It was amazing.
Nice.
We had this empty spot and just hooned it. It was so raw. I already have a lot of chest hair. I had more by the end of it.
Yeah, you start grunting.
Oh man, I mean, I was just like
grunting for years.
you know, that and I think one of my dream cars is a Superformance GT40 for that reason. They're about 120, 150 grand now. They're expensive.
I saw one at a car show. I took the LFA
They're
to this car show, and
insane.
then everyone ran to the LFA. I jumped out of the LFA and I ran to that.
I know that's
Can
a
someone
car.
start this now?
Like all the cars we drive, except for maybe Tedward, they're all pretty good. They're all very refined. They're all easy to drive.
I drive some shit boxes.
Stuff like that, like it could kill you very quickly, very easily.
Oh yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah.
and
yeah.
that's exciting.
Yeah, they'll murder. They are not nice.
Merging
Yeah.
onto the highway in
A little
an
bit
original
murdery.
Porsche Speedster.
Yeah.
Have done. Very terrifying. Love it when someone puts highway gears in those. That's
Yeah.
appreciated.
Yeah. So for me, it's that Factory 5 Cobra is the most memorable.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right, so just because of what you said, Kevin, I'm going to change my answer and pick what my heart says is the most memorable car. And I can't put my finger on one specific example of that car. And I'll just be honest, it's the Honda S2000.
Of course.
Okay, but it's not just a bone stock whatever S2000. It's a couple of examples, maybe 2 or 3 I've driven. Actually, my close friends built all 3 of those, by the way, 3 different people. And they built them to be hardcore track cars. And you might think like, yeah, of course a track car is going to feel good. But until you've driven an S2000 with full bolt-ons, tune, full aero, JRZ 2-way suspension, OS Geek and 1.5-way LSD, the works, like 100, 200 pounds weight reduction, to where you're just like getting that zero counter steer around every corner, like the fastest way to just get a little bit of
delicious
oversteer.
rotation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just power through it.
Eric's-
without ever lifting off.
Eric's S2000. I'm going to agree with Mr. S2000 himself. Eric's S2000 was like number 2.
Yeah.
Right after the GT3 for me. If I was on that road, it might have been number 1. Because we were on Mines Road, so
Yeah,
not
yeah.
as
It's a
not as
bumpy
picturesque, etc. So
But it's just the most telepathic car I've ever driven. Yeah, sure, I've driven stuff that like blew my mind.
Same.
Siri
What do
just
you not
wanted to get in.
understand? Honda S2000, come on.
Get with the program.
Siri doesn't
Siri.
understand. She's like, I'm sorry, we're building a car here at Apple. You guys should be on our side.
But yeah, I've driven cars that like blew my mind, like R35 GTR. The first time I drove one, I was like, how is this a 3,800 pound car and other stuff like that. But I mean, there's a reason I always go back to the S2000, and it's not just a stock S2000. It's the ones that have been like properly tuned. So
S2000's in my top 5 too.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like Caterham 7, S2000, and then other shit.
Yeah.
Then Porsches.
Yeah.
Well, I almost mentioned it when we were talking about Civic earlier, and I know you're looking to wrap up, but someone told me once that the reason that Porsche and Honda are so good to drive is they're some of the few brands that actually have their engineers be part of race programs. And that DNA is transmitted through everything they produce. Hondas, Porsches. So many of their engineers are involved in racing, and you feel that.
so
God
true.
bless Andy Pruniger and David Salters. David Salters is the Andy Pruniger of HPD, so he's like the guy. He's the
Oh, okay.
coolest. They're both really tall, like European dudes.
That's what you need.
Interesting.
David Salters is so effing cool. I will speak his praises.
I
all
have
the
not
time.
heard. I've not heard about him.
I will show.
I'm
I
gonna
will
look him up
teach
now.
you the ways.
We have so many new podcast episodes to record with you. I mean, we
Dude,
could be
yeah.
here all night.
Honestly, I have so much more to talk to you guys about, but we do have a dinner res coming up in 23 minutes, and I think it takes 26 minutes to get there. So thank
We'll
you
hold it for
all
15
for
minutes.
being part of this podcast. This is just a ton of fun. I met 4 of you like 5 minutes before we hit record. But I feel like we got a really good like sort of cadence going. So hopefully we can do this more in the future. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know what podcast episode or topics you'd like to see in the next one, if that day ever comes. I'm sure it will, hopefully sooner rather than later. I'll put links to these guys' channels all in the video description, and I'll see you guys next time.